Hello artists, this is Mrs. Simpson, and in this demonstration video I am going to show you how to complete your emphasis sketchbook. So for this sketchbook, like all your sketchbook assignments, you should have up on your computer screen at the very least is your emphasis reference sheet. So you don't need to print this one, but you should be able to look at this while you are working, and having it on your computer will do just fine. What you should print to make it super duper easy is the worksheet. And if you don't print the worksheet, remember you can always do everything on a blank piece of paper. You can fold up a blank piece of paper to divide it into boxes. In this case, we only need 2 boxes. So you could fold a blank piece of paper in half and you have a box for the top and a box for the bottom. And then you could just work directly on the blank sheet of paper. All right. So for this one, you can see I actually already have it started just for making my videos a little quicker for all of you. But there are some key things that we need to go over. We did talk about this sketchbook in class in a little more detail. So let's talk here then, what is emphasis? Emphasis is a part of a design that catches a viewer's eye and brings it to the focal point of the design. Emphasis is created by using contrast in a design, and contrast is pretty much an opposite. We're creating difference in something. So to make a really simple, easy emphasis within your artwork, just by making one thing different from the rest is going to create a emphasis. So if you look at the example here of all the chickens, what one chicken stands out from the rest? Right, this one right here. Why? Well, first of all, the lines, the element of art line, is directing our eyes towards this chicken out of the rest. And secondly, it's different from all the rest. What makes it different? It's a different color. And if you look at your reference sheet on your computer screen, it will be in color. But you can see here, I don't have color ink, so it comes out in black and white. But still, it's a different value. It's a different value from the rest. And those are some of the techniques that we're going to work on here for this sketchbook assignment. One thing you need to keep in mind when you're working is that when you're creating a design, make sure not everything is emphasized, or there will be no focal points and nothing will stand out, and the viewer's eyes won't know where to go. So if we were just to cover up this part of the artwork, and if you were to look at the rest of the drawing in the back, notice that nothing is emphasized. So there's nowhere for us to focus on. And that's okay to have that in a work of art. But for this sketchbook, we want to show a focal point. We want to show emphasis. So we're going to focus on bringing a focal point in somewhere within your work of art. And we're going to do that by these 6 techniques down here at the bottom. So you're going to want to reference these 6 techniques to help you fill out your sketchbook worksheet. So in the first box here, it's asking you to create a design with emphasis. And you want to include the following techniques for successful emphasis. You'll then label each technique. So the techniques we're looking for, I want you to focus on when you make your one design here, is to focus on using shape, line, and value. So you can see I already have mine started here, and I'm actually going to outline it so you can watch me do that. But I focus on shapes. And shape, we create an emphasis by adding a variety of shapes to your design. But when we do that, we could have one of them sticking out or different from the rest. So a bunch of triangles next to a circle. So I have a lot of shapes going on here, but one item that's going to stand out from the rest here is the heart. 1, because it's larger than most of the other shapes, and 2, my lines, and that's another technique you're going to use, my lines are pointing to my focal points. I'm also going to focus on value, and I'm going to do some shading of going from dark to light, or even a value contrast to show the difference and to emphasize my focal point here, which is my heart. And all of these techniques can be studied more and read about more on your reference sheet. So I'm going to fill this out now. I'm going to complete this so I can add some more value, and I can even add more emphasis to my work. My final step then is to label. So where are my shapes? Well, my shapes are right here. I have the heart in this circle, kind of semicircle. So I can just put a little arrow here and write shapes. Where are the lines? Obviously, here are all my lines. And then value. So my value is right here. You don't have to use a color value. You could just use your pencil. My value here is using 2 different colors of red, of going from a darker to a lighter color of red, a more dark maroon to a pure red. This is just creating that contrast or that difference, and that will continue to emphasize my focal point. So you notice here, my focal point doesn't need to be smack dab in the middle. My focal point is off to the side, but what is guiding my viewer's eyes to my design here is not only the shape itself, the size, the lines that are pointing to it, but that value. So my value is right here. Now, I'm not going to take off points if you don't label, but it will be nice if you will label to identify where each technique is. Okay, for the bottom one then, what we're going to do is we're going to create a emphasis using the techniques of color, space, and texture. So if we come back to our reference sheet here, it talks about how we can use color, space, and texture. For color, we can just use one different color to make something pop. For space, that might be a little bit more trickier for some of us to think about that, but this one's actually pretty easy if you just follow the reference sheet. All you have to do is you can focus on that rule of thirds. And remember when we did the proportions, we talked about the golden ratio, our last sketchbook, and we looked at that golden ratio and the mathematical equation and how with the golden ratios, we end up with numbers in sets of 3s, 5s, and it goes on and on and on. Artists like to work in those sets, especially in a rule of thirds or a set of 3. So if we divide our paper into thirds vertically or horizontally, and we place our focal point in one of the thirds, that will help with showing emphasis using space. And then texture, of course, is the way something feels, but we want to emphasize it by putting opposites next to one another, like hard versus soft or shiny versus matte. So that being said here, I already have mine started. And if you look here, I cut my paper into thirds here for space with these little dots. So that's like one of the first thing you can do. You can take your pencil, you can do it much lighter than I am, and you could cut up your little box here into thirds and then decide where you're going to put your focal point. It can be right in the middle, but I decided to put my focal point, again, it's the heart over here to the side. So you can see I got a lot going on here. But my focal point, I'm going to make the heart. It's not quite noticeable now, but that's why I'm going to go back in now and I'm going to focus on using color to help to create this focal point. You can see I have these soft, smooth textures throughout, and I'm going to continue to add then an opposite texture around my heart here. So let's take a look while I finish this one, and you can watch me use each of these techniques to complete this. All right, so there we have it. So for this one, now it's much easier to see that emphasis because there is a lot going on here, but where's your eye drawn to? Again, the eye is drawn to this heart over here. Why? Because I am emphasizing it with color. So this is one way to use color as an emphasis is by making everything one tone and then throwing in a brighter, bolder color of contrast. So that's the focal point. Also, I pulled again the use of lines from up top. And I also use these curly lines to guide our eyes over here. But you also want to keep in mind a unified work of art. I have a contrast in texture. I have this smooth kind of bumpy texture throughout the bottom here. And then I have this zigzag texture around the heart up at the top. And then for space, to label that, you can see I just kind of, right there is space, and I just showed that I use the technique of dividing it into thirds. So that is how you can do emphasis. There are really no wrong answers here. As long as you're trying to use each of these elements of art to show emphasis, that is all I'm looking for. You can make one single design like I did here, or you could do 3 little examples where you show shapes and show one emphasize. You show lines and how you can emphasize lines. So it's up to you. You can, do each one of these individually, like shown here. So you could do a box for each of these, just focusing in on that element of art and emphasis, or you could just do one big design. Really, no wrong answers. I'm looking for your best efforts. Remember, I'm always looking for your effort. That's really all I'm looking for. If you're trying it, if you're putting in a little bit of work, and I can see that you really tried to tackle this, I can only assure you that you will see nothing but success. So reach out to me if you need any help. Otherwise, I can't wait to see your finished sketchbook assignments. It's always a pleasure to see what you guys come up with.